What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Five Red Lights. My name is Jesse Finver, and with me, as always, Howard Goldberg. And Howie, we had a great race once again, round 9 in Barcelona. We had a lot of excitement in this one. I think the result was everybody knew early on what was going to happen, but I think that a lot of stuff happened in this race worth talking about. There's a lot of storylines. There was a lot of near crashes. There's a lot of drama, and I honestly can't wait to dig into this one.
Coming into this weekend as well, there was a lot of intrigue around the new technical directive about the flexi wings and whether that would radically shake up the pecking order, if it would affect McLaren, because a lot of teams were hoping it would. McLaren tested that wing in FP1 at Imola. And as we saw this week, it ended up having no impact on them
at all.
They looked as dominant as ever. They were incredibly fast in qualifying. Oscar had the biggest gap for pole this year, and then they just drove away in the race. So it was a great performance by them this weekend. Ferrari had really good race pace with Charles. It was awesome seeing him carve through the field like that.
That's back-to-back weeks too. That's back-to-back weeks for Charles now.
And the Sauber showing race pace we haven't seen from them since I started watching Formula One, certainly. It's been incredible. You have to go back to like the days of when Sauber was, maybe when they were partnered with like BMW. Back to when they were good. It's been a long time.
5th place for Nico Hulkenberg because Max Verstappen had a little bit of a hissy fit.
Had a rage quit in real life.
Yeah, it's what we're going to talk about a lot. I have a lot of thoughts on that. But yeah, so McLaren wins. Oscar in first, Lando in second. Lando lost his. The qualifying was Oscar, Lando, Max, George as the top 4, and early on in the race, at the race start, Max passes Lando, and you're watching it and you're like, all right, great. Not like once again, Lando just can't. Yeah, he can't build upon a win and struggles, and obviously Oscar on pole in qualifying. How much faster did he go? It was like 0.2 of a second, which is pretty good. Almost 3 or 4 tenths from Max. So Oscar was definitely earned that pole spot. But early on in that race, you're like, great. Once again, Lando can't get it together. And throughout the race and how the flow went, Lando was able to get that spot back and finish in second. We're not going to I don't think there's a need to.
Lando ended up having a really good race.
Yeah, he did a good job.
Corner. That's what happens though. I think it's smart, quite frankly, for him and even for Oscar. Play it safe in the first corner. They have the advantage that Max has had the past couple years of how many times have we heard GP come on the radio past 3 or 4 years, Max's race engineer, of Max, be patient, you'll get them, you have time.
You have the pace. Yeah.
Exactly. You have the car, you'll catch them. They don't need to do it into the first corner and then play defense. They can afford to ease off, let that position go in turn 1, and then take it back in the race. Because they are that much better.
Lando came in second, and he was 8 seconds faster than Charles at the end of the race, and that was within 3 or 4 laps.
That was with the safety car 6 laps.
Yeah, that was
the race.
He put that time on in 3 laps, so that was very impressive. But yeah, once again, McLaren running away with it, and it's not only is the
weekend help. Go ahead.
Not only is the Constructors Championship over, but it's the Drivers Championship is also, it's just between 2 guys now.
I was about to say that. This weekend really helped bring the drivers into a much clearer picture of, I mean, before we were kind of like, how long can Max kind of like hang around as a threat? I mean, this weekend, Max kind of torpedoed himself in that regard. Mercedes was way off it. They just didn't look impressive. So it really kind of, you honed in on the two McLaren drivers. Those, and it's what most people thought. It's what most people had already been saying, but it really is now.
It's been pretty apparent. McLaren. It's been pretty apparent for weeks now, and this is only round 9. It's only round 9. We got like what, 15 more races, and it's pretty much all but over. So, McLaren, we're crowning you early. We're crowning you early. Congratulations. Now, us saying that is just going to lead to them collapsing and whatnot, just jinxing the hell out of them. But yeah, realistically, it's McLaren's drivers' championship and constructors' championship to lose now.
The constructors is really interesting now, though, because we now have Red Bull has dropped to 4th. Pretty distant too. They're now 15 points behind Mercedes in 3rd, whereas Ferrari is catapulted up to 2nd in this race. And it's an unbelievable turnaround from Ferrari, because think about where they would be even without the China disqualifications. They lost 18 points from that.
Yeah.
Mercedes gained 4. So that's a 22-point swing, right? So right now they'd be 28 points ahead of Mercedes instead of 6 points. They didn't get disqualified in China. That's a huge deal. And this is a Ferrari team that people are extremely disappointed in, that they're terribly underperforming. And here they are. I mean, if you look at every single race and the points they should have had, fairly comfortably in 2nd place right now.
They're 200, and what's crazy is they're 200 points behind McLaren. They're 200 points behind McLaren. But we were
just a runaway train at the front.
We were so disappointed in Ferrari early on this season because of race strategy, underperforming drivers, whether it's underperformance or it's Lewis just getting used to a new car, but underperforming from Charles. And the last couple of weeks, we've really seen Ferrari improve.
We've really seen Charles ratchet it up.
Yeah.
And it's important to say that, because in particular at the end of this race in Barcelona, it was tough to see Lewis so down. It felt almost like in the cockpit he was saying he thought he was done. And it's regardless of whether you are a big fan of him, whether you're indifferent to him, whether you don't like him, it's really hard to see objectively one of the best that this sport has ever seen, if not just for a very long time. And
that's probably the first time he's ever gotten passed by a Sauber.
Watching a career end like that, Nico Rosberg made a tongue-in-cheek comment at the beginning of the weekend of he's getting slow because he's just old. And it kind of like, yeah, they're buddies now. They were great friends. They had their rough patch. It seems like they've become friends again in some way. But hearing him say that and then seeing the performance, it's almost like, shit, how much of that was tongue-in-cheek? Like, how much of that did Nico mean? And then hearing Lewis combined with that after the race on radio, that was brutal.
So let me ask you something. This thought just came to me, and I don't know why we haven't discussed this yet. Maybe we have, and I just don't remember. But Lewis's decision to go to Ferrari, at the time, you're like, okay, like that's like the best driver duo, like pure driver duo right there, right? Like, wow, you have like a, one of the best young drivers in the sport, and then you have
Well,
Lewis Hamilton.
Certainly, it felt like there was something to talk about with McLaren finally.
No, for sure. But
you're finally a rival to it.
You see Lewis go to Ferrari. It's a huge move. But I'm starting to wonder why he went to Ferrari if he feels like he's still the guy. Because when you go to when you make that decision and you go to Ferrari, he is on paper preseason, you're like, all right, like it's 1A, 1B. And it's been very clear this season Charles is a better driver right now. Now maybe the car is just better that Charles is driving in, but you'd assume that the cars would be very simple. Like it's not like it's a Red Bull thing, where they're tuning the car to Max's preferences, and it's very specific to Max, and that's why it's so hard for everybody else to drive. And this is a Ferrari team that you have to like assume is like, yeah, like these cars are basically the same, like these two guys. And consistently this season, Charles has outperformed Lewis. So I'm asking myself, like, you were at Mercedes, you were the guy, you were number one, and George was the clear number two. And now George is the number one, and George is in third place. What is he? He's in, what's the drivers? He's in fourth place in the ahead of both of them, right? If you're Lewis, why did you go to Ferrari?
Well,
why not stay where you're going to be the man? And now this is all with hindsight, like looking back in hindsight. But like it's like now you're like we're 9 races in and has he beaten Charles once, maybe twice? And it's just like, damn, like in hindsight, maybe he should have stayed in Mercedes and been the number one driver there and benefited from that instead of having to duke it out with a really, really good driver in Charles, who's, I think he's better than George, but, George has just had a better car for most of the season. What do you think of that?
I think that clearly Lewis felt his grip as the guy at Mercedes slipping. And it didn't take much more than looking at last year of Russell finishing ahead of him 15 times versus 9. Russell qualifying ahead of him 19 times versus 5. And that's just in the races. In sprints, he finished ahead of him 5 times versus 1. So, like, there were indicators. And I think also Lewis has kind of not, I think it's been out there that at one point he said he wanted to drive for Ferrari at one point in his career. He would have loved to do that. And this was the time to do it.
Yeah. Again, I'm just asking the question
to do it. And yeah, I think that as successful as they were, Lewis and Mercedes, partnerships come to an end. And I think that they had kind of just run their course together. And
that makes sense. That does.
There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. It's just a natural thing. But like, that's just what made it so shocking, is the amount of success they had together.
And it just feels like we may never see that level of success for Lewis Hamilton again. Right? I mean,
we might never see that level of success.
No.
Driver
again. Not the longevity. I'm talking about reaching that high of winning a world championship, a driver's championship, and breaking the record.
That was highly doubtful if he stayed at Mercedes.
I know.
I don't think he was probably going to win.
That's always been his goal, I'm sure. It's just not, I don't think that's attainable anymore, unfortunately. And it's kind of like he lost that opportunity on the track in that final lap all those years ago. So
yeah, he lost it in Abu Dhabi.
Yep. So it's really unfortunate. Off the track. It's just me. This was just me piggybacking off of like it kind of being, what Nico said. And is this not the end, but like, it's just, it does feel like the end of an era.
The twilight.
Yeah, it feels like he's entering that Fernando Alonso zone where you're a former world champ driving and you're not going through the motions, but like you just want to keep driving, and there's going to be a spot for you wherever you want it because of your name. And he just happens to be a Ferrari right now. And I don't know, maybe with the new regulations next year, they are legitimately contending for constructors. And
It's possible. I'm not really seeing that. I'm not seeing that. I think it's Mercedes and their powered cars that are going to be dominant.
Well, we don't know yet. We don't know yet. We'll see. But that has to be like the goal for him at this point of his career, to be contributing to constructors, not a world drivers championship. So, good weekend for Ferrari. Good weekend for Ferrari indeed. Bad weekend for Mercedes. Transitioning to
I mean, that's really it. It doesn't really have to go deeper than that. It just was a bad weekend for them.
Bad weekend. Another rough one for Kimi.
That wasn't his fault though. It was his engine malfunction. The engine just died. So
yeah,
that sucks. But
what place was he in?
That wasn't driver error.
What place was he in?
Nothing spectacular.
He is going to be legitimately fighting for Rookie of the Year now with Hadjar, don't you think?
Yeah. Well, Hadjar could win it anyway. I don't think that it's beholden to points. I think that
it shouldn't be.
I agree. You have to take performance into account relative to the car too.
Yeah.
And to teammate. What's the teammate doing as a reference? And you can't deny what Hadjar is doing.
Another top 10. He came in seventh here. Should have been 8th, but 7th. Which, I mean, that is just consistency. I mean,
great work.
That's 3 in a row.
Maximizing what he can get, and that's all that they can ask of him. That was,
points in 4 of his last 5. I mean, he's in Racing Bulls. That's good stuff from Hadjar. That is
let him just keep developing there. That's all you can ask.
Absolutely. All right.
I want to move on.
Let's move on.
Well, the next big story of the weekend, obviously, Lance Stroll.
Yes.
As a result of what happened with him, Aston Martin only fielded 1 car in the race. Fernando Alonso. Phenomenal to see him get his first points of the season at his home race.
Snaps for him.
I love seeing that. The last time they're racing at Barcelona, at least for the foreseeable future, because they're going to be moving to the Madrid next year, a new road course in Madrid.
Mm-hmm.
And this Lance Stroll thing is really freaking weird. I mean, it's just the smoke and mirrors involved in this is off-putting, to say the least.
Break it down for us.
The original story,
I know he had an injury.
The original story this weekend was that he re-injured his wrists. If you remember, he had that cycling accident before Bahrain, before the season in 2023, and had to get surgery. And somehow 2 weeks later, he was racing in Bahrain. Nobody really understood how that was possible. He broke both of his wrists in a race 2 weeks later. So this weekend, story comes out that 6 weeks ago, he re-injured those wrists and has been driving through the pain. And that after qualifying, he said that the pain was too much and he couldn't race. And so, but because he had already qualified the car, you can't have a different driver qualify the car and race the car under FIA regulations. So that meant that Fernando was the only Aston in the race. And then it got weirder, where reports came out that Lance missed the mandatory FIA weigh-in, driver weigh-in, after qualifying, which is like immediately after you get out of the car. He didn't report. And then news came out that he threw a temper tantrum in the garage and started like breaking shit, and that's how he actually hurt his wrist. He
pulled an Amari Stoudemire?
He pulled a Kevin Brown, and he went back into the clubhouse, punched the wall, and broke his hand. That's what happened with Kevin Brown as a Yankee.
And Amari Stoudemire punched a fire hydrant and broke his wrist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Plaxico Burress shot himself in the leg. Never mind. But no, it's a stunning thing, and it's not the first time we've heard these outrageous stories about Lance in the garage, of him acting like a entitled, petulant child. And Mike Crack came out and said that he hadn't heard anything about something like that happening in the garage. And to me, that just kind of confirms it, because you either say, no, that definitely didn't happen, or we're looking into something. To say that you just like, oh, well, I haven't heard of anything, is just kind of like the cop-out. It's trying to avoid it in a really
that is the ultimate like politician, like, oh, like the Speaker of the House is like, yeah, I haven't heard anything that the president said. I'm not privy to that. Sorry. Like, yeah. Uh-huh.
And originally when I saw the news, I was already quite upset with how it was handled, because I didn't think Lance should have been in the car for the past few weeks if he re-injured it, because it's not like another sport where you hurt your knee, you're a basketball player, you decide I want to play through it, and if it gets worse, you end up tearing your ACL, and that sucks. You're going to be out for a year. But if you do that as a basketball player, you're not endangering anybody else. If you go out in a Formula One car with surgically repaired wrists that are not structurally sound, I mean, any kind of vibration in the wheel can set that off. And like that feedback is so strong. What it can do to the tiny little bones in your hand and wrist, there's a reason you take your hand off the steering wheel in a crash.
Can the FIA...
So I think it's irresponsible. I thought it was irresponsible if the case was that he really re-injured it weeks ago, that he was still driving. And so that kind of set me off. And then it just, the second story just bothered me for a different reason entirely.
So you're off of Team Stroll.
Yeah.
As a Stroll defender, you were out.
Yeah.
Can the FIA do something? Can they look into? I mean, not that we have any expectations of them doing the right thing, but
no.
Is there like an investigation they can launch into how this has been handled and how dangerous this could have been?
I'm not really an expert on it, but I don't think so.
No, I'm just wondering. I know, yeah. I'm just wondering if you've heard I
think if something happened on track, certainly something would have happened. But
yeah, it's ridiculous. No, it's ridiculous.
Because if you lose he's being control of that car going 250, 300 kilometers an hour, I mean, somebody's
gonna die,
possibly getting hurt.
Yeah,
I don't know about die, but I mean, yeah, it's possible, but more likely is just injury and potentially very serious.
And it's probably him. It's probably him that's going to get seriously injured.
It's him. It's him. It's not even one of the drivers. It's a marshal on the side of the track.
Yep.
Like there's just too many people out there.
It's ridiculous, and it something needs to change. I understand we're not going to see any change because of who his father is, but it's high time that Aston Martin took itself seriously and found a legitimate driver to go along with Fernando Alonso, because this sort of behavior, throwing tantrums, refusing to give your seat up because of an injury, a significant injury, is unacceptable on so many levels. It's so immature and dangerous. I mean, there's just I feel like this episode's going to be me yelling at drivers a lot, because there's another driver that I'm very upset with right now. And I have very similar
you're gonna have to hold off on that.
I'm holding off on that, but this is
segue for me.
This is this has got me fired up.
Of what you just said of a legitimate driver, and this thing with Lance now opens up of he might potentially have to miss the next race, which would be horrible for him because it could potentially be his last home race in Formula One.
Should be.
All public statements indicate he is going to still be driving the car next year, but this is Formula One and you never know. They have a new partner coming into the picture with Honda. So you never know what kind of demands they might have. And if Lance isn't in the car for Canada, Felipe Drugovich, former F2 champion, is going to be in the car. And he's going to be missing his chance to drive at Le Mans for the overall victory in the hypercar class. He'd be driving with Cadillac at that race. And so he'd be giving up the opportunity for the 24 hours of Le Mans to have a spot start in Formula One. And imagine for a second Felipe Drugovich comes out and has an incredible debut the way like Nick DeVries had. What kind of problem do we now have on our hands? Are we trying to like ease Lance back through his recovery and be like, oh, Lance, there's no rush coming back, and see if Drugovich can do it again the next week in Austria?
Sure, on paper, yeah.
So, like, exactly, this is the conundrum, because any reasonable team would do that in this situation with a driver that's performed the way he has over a number of years. And that's why this is so fascinating, because it is an opportunity to see somebody else finally in that seat against Fernando, and an opportunity to see actually kind of where Lance stacks up in comparison, actually. Because, people are always like, throw so-and-so against Lance and see it. I actually quite like seeing somebody else in against the baseline of Alonso versus somebody against the baseline of Lance. I think it's more telling.
I think that any rational team, I agree, any rational team would be jumping at the opportunity to get another driver in there, and it's just when Lance Stroll is the owner.
But the father of the driver is signing everybody's checks. It complicates everything immensely. And
I mean, don't you think
that's an understatement?
Don't you think Adrian Newey is licking his chops, being like, I want anybody else to test my cars out right now? Yeah. Like, yeah.
Which, by the way, a quick Adrian Newey note. I think I said it last week, but how great was it seeing him at Monaco with his little notebook?
Yeah. Just writing his little notes down. Yeah.
All right.
He's just nerding out. I mean, this is just once again frustration when it comes to Lance Stroll and Aston Martin. Aston Martin is way too cool of a brand to be dealing with this BS. I'm hoping that they figure their shit out.
I think me too. I mean, I really hope they do, because now with Amazon, with having control of the Bond franchise, I mean, they're going to start pumping stuff out. I mean, hopefully, fingers crossed, it's not all garbage. And I mean, it opens the door for some awesome crossover stuff with the two brands. So Yeah.
That'd be nice. All right. Last little note. We mentioned them before, but I just want to say it again. Good for Sauber. Good for Nico. Nico
You almost wish
Hulkenberg.
that there were more penalties ahead with Charles and George. That way he gets his first podium in F1.
Yeah.
Nico's never had one. He's had like the most starts ever without a podium.
Hey, you know what? I mean, maybe Sauber
come
unlocks
so
something.
Close.
Maybe
Oh,
Sauber's
poor
unlocked
guy.
something. You never know. I'm not holding my breath though. But I'm very happy for Sauber and Nico for getting in the points. And I think that was not their first points of the season, but that was the best finish they've had.
No, they got points in Australia.
Yeah, I mean,
and
he got
we
10.
thought that was going to feed them for a while, and then Haas went nuts.
Yeah, and then Nico with 10 points right here. 10 points for Nico Hulkenberg. That's crazy. All right, well, good for Sauber. Maybe they can build on this.
And you know what was fun that I saw on social media? Max Verstappen's shop, maxverstappen.com, sells 21 model cars, like little scaled down versions. 21 of them are Max Verstappen. The other one, Nico Hulkenberg.
Amazing. I love it.
I think that's a segue because you said that you were quite upset with another driver.
Yeah, I am. And I think you are too. I think everybody's pretty upset.
Let me give you the floor here, though, and I'll pick up the scraps.
It was lap 63 or 64. There was a couple of laps left. I mean, this was right off the restart, actually. This was like 61. And Max gets passed by Charles on the back straight or on the front straight, right? And this is after, so earlier in like a couple, like we talked about this earlier, but Max had to change to hard tires, and Max was not sure why he was going to hard tires, but that's all they really had left. So that definitely hurt his chances of finishing where he wanted to finish. But on that straight, he gets passed by Charles, and Charles bumps into him a little bit. He's like, Charles is kind of veering left a tad, and Max's front right tire hits like the left side of Charles's car. They bump a little bit, but Charles had the line and beat him with DRS, and Max was clearly pissed off about that, getting past there. And so they get to that first turn, and George beats him to the apex.
Yeah, and they were pretty side by side.
They were pretty side by side, but George had him to the point where Christian comes on the mic and says, "Hey, we need you to give the spot back to George."
Which I thought was really confusing in the moment because Max followed the protocol of taking the escape road and going around the baller.
Yes, absolutely. Which is also equally as frustrating because this was also avoidable. It really was. I'm okay with Christian being like, "Hey, give the spot back." I don't think it was necessarily necessary. Maybe race control makes him do it anyway. But like it was kind of surprising.
I think their thinking was give it back, take race control out of it, and we'll have a chance at him on the next lap. I think that was the thinking on the pit wall.
Yeah. And you get an extra lap probably to figure that out, lap or two, because race control takes forever to figure these things out in their investigations. So it was turn. I gotta look up I'm not gonna bother looking up what turn specifically it was. But it was George
4 or 5.
I decided to look it up.
It was 4 or 5.
It was 4 or 5 heading into 6, 7, and Christian goes, give the spot back. Max is freaking out, and he seemingly pulls up and says, he's just giving the spot back, and then accelerates into George as George is passing him and hits him intentionally. it's one of the most reckless and dangerous things I've ever seen in sports. Not just racing, in sports. I mean, and driving, racing is the most dangerous sport, other than like what MMA, where you're actually like beating the shit out of somebody in front of you. But I've never seen something so reckless before on a racetrack in my 4 or 5 years watching racing consistently. Max has a problem, man. When he doesn't get his way, he turns into a petulant child. And
that's the second one we've talked about on this podcast.
But this is worse because he has expectations. He has a brand that he needs to uphold. He is the 4-time world drivers champion.
He has the talent that he doesn't need to act like that.
He is way above this. And I understand that this sort of mentality that he has is what makes him great, where it's a win at all costs and he hates to lose more than he likes to win, sort of thing that you only see in the greats. But this is unacceptable. You cannot accelerate into another driver on a turn like that. That could have gotten you both killed. And I know these cars are a lot safer than they used to be, but that is not something you do. It's unbelievable. I could not believe what I was watching. The whole F1 world couldn't believe what they were watching. This was unacceptable on so many levels, and it pissed me off.
Yeah. I think saying that they could have been killed from that might be a little overboard.
They weren't going fast enough for that, but they could have been seriously injured.
I think it's flagrantly just out of bounds. It's completely unsporting. It in this age of the cost cap to potentially inflict unnecessary damage on both your own car and your competitors is asinine. I think just like the common respect that you're supposed to have for your fellow drivers, there's 20 of you. There's only 20 of you in the world. Only 19 other people that can relate to what you're going through on a day-to-day basis. There's supposed to be a respect there, even if you're rivals. And we saw that thrown out the window. And that's really what I feel is at the core of the problem.
We saw it post-race. Oscar, Lando, and Charles sitting in that room, the post-race room, reacting, and they saw that, and they were like, whoa.
Lando gave, like, a smile, like, he just, like, kind of looked, he, like, gave a did that happen smile, and then, like, a couple seconds later, tried to, like, diffuse the situation almost by, like, I've done that before in Mario Kart.
Yeah,
like, it's like, they couldn't believe it. Like they saw the Charles and Max one, and they're like, oh, well. And Charles was like, I was just trying to get slipstream, and they're like, okay, yeah, it makes sense. And then they saw that one, they're like, oh my god, it was a completely different reaction.
Netflix is probably like grinning ear to ear. Yeah, it was so happy that they have the access that they do. Mm-hmm. I'm interested to see the behind the scenes post this race because if I'm George, I'm like ready to swing. Like I'm so angry at Max for doing that. And honestly, like you'd think like Toto would be pissed at Christian, but like
no, he wants Max too bad.
But like, yeah, I'm sure.
He wants
but like,
to sign Max too badly.
But
he's
Christian's
not gonna get mad at it.
Toto's probably pissed, and he's like, I can't do anything about it because I want Max. But also, like, Christian was like, this wasn't Christian's fault, and I know they don't like each other. That's why I brought that up.
Right.
Like he probably wishes
the right thing.
He probably wishes he could be made.
Red Bull tried to do the right thing.
He probably wishes that he could be like fucking Christian again, blah blah blah. No, Christian tried to do the right thing, and you can't like get mad at him for his driver like losing his head. So I haven't seen any quotes, but did Max talk to the media after? Did he talk to anybody about this? Did he get asked any questions? Have you seen this at all?
He did. he blew it off. He was asked by Sky Sports and was told like what George Russell said, and he was just like, okay, great. He didn't really concern himself with it. It wasn't until yesterday, the following day, the day after the race, that Max posted an apology and was like, I know what I did shouldn't have happened, and yeah. So it took a lot longer than it should have. He knows he was in the wrong.
Yeah,
I don't.
He
I don't
heard from
think
some
we can
very
say
powerful.
I don't think we can say that we'll forget. We can forget it happened, but I think we can move on. I think people realize the damage of what was done, and now we can move on from it.
He heard from some very powerful people being like, you can't do that, man. You got to post an apology. Like, that was not like high up at Red Bull, like being like, listen, you gotta do something about that.
Yeah. And I think that a couple interesting things come out of this. Well, first off, before we get to that, a lot of people made something of the tires, of putting him on the hards, and it's a really tough decision because Max at the time the safety car came out on lap 55, Max has already made all three of his stops. Every other team had only made two. So Max had already gone through his tires. And his pit stop before that, I think, was on lap 36. So he had done 19 laps already on that set of hard tires. Leaving him out was not an option with the kind of deg that we see at Barcelona. So those guys that put on their qualifying tires with like 4 laps on them, they would have been past him into turn 2, probably turn 3. He had a hard time warming them up, but once they were warm, once he got heat into them, he was able to drive on them. He was able to put up somewhat of a fight on the road. But the penalty was his undoing.
Yep.
I mean, without the penalty, he still probably finishes P5, P6. So like, yeah, that really was the undoing, and that leads to the next thing of where you almost feel like he removed himself this week from the championship battle.
And this is the most fascinating.
What we said. Yeah. It's what we said before about how the pictures came into much clearer picture this weekend. And part of this is that he only took 1 point away from this race when Oscar and Lando took 25 and 18. But the other thing is Max is now on 11 penalty points on his FIA Super license. You only get 12. So the next on-track incident he has, next penalty point, he gets a race ban. And when you look at the upcoming schedule, you get the sense that Max is going to have to be incredibly reserved and tentative for who he is on the track, because Canada is the next race. If he gets a penalty in Canada, he's going to miss the Austrian Grand Prix at the Red Bull Ring, which is his team's home race. If he gets a penalty in Austria, he's going to miss the British Grand Prix, which is his team's other home race. Other than Aston Martin, whose factory is in Silverstone, Red Bull has the closest factory to the track. If he gets a penalty in Belgium, he's going to miss Spa, which is essentially his second Grand Prix, his second home Grand Prix. If he gets a penalty in Spa, though, he's going to miss the Hungarian Grand Prix, which has no real significance to him except for the fact that he won that race and Lando broke his trophy.
So real quick, do you know when? So I just looked this up. Do you know that he has 2 points expiring on June 30th?
Okay, so that means that
So he has basically he can't
so he
get
can't get
into
a penalty in Austria though.
in in in
So he's
Canada
got to stay clean in Canada and Austria.
and Austria. He has to stay clean in those races. Mainly, it makes next week a must stay clean for him because he can't miss Austria.
Yeah.
He just simply cannot miss Austria. And I was just Googling, like, how many points does everybody have? So he loses 2 points, expired the June 30th. They were awarded for causing a collision with Lando at the 2024 Austrian Grand Prix. Then
Yeah,
2
that's
points
when
expire.
Lando and him were going back and forth. Lando kept trying to get by him at what is that, turn 2? Maybe it's
And
turn
then
3 because that straight kind of bends to the left. But yeah.
so he has another one for forcing Lando off track at the 2024
That
Mexico
was at
Grand Prix.
Mexico the next weekend.
But these expire October 27th.
Oh, that was not the next weekend. Never mind. No, there was what was the week before Mexico last year that there was something with the two of them.
Why can't I look up last year's calendar? Oh, here we go. Here. So it was before Mexico. We had,
I think it was probably Coda, but I don't think that there was anything between them there.
Mexico was in October last year. That's why. So it was United States Grand Prix. So this must have been October 18th to the 20th. Yeah, that was that race was Austin, because that was the week that Georgia and Texas were playing, and my buddy had a bachelor party there, and F1 was going on, and it was like the craziest weekend. That I couldn't make it. It was like literally F1 priced me out of making it that weekend because of how crazy it made it, how expensive it made everything. So yeah, it was, and then Singapore was the week before that. So Mexico was later in the season last year.
Yeah. And at that point, Max was desperate because it had been what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That was the 10th race running that he hadn't had a win after dominating the sport for 3 years. So he was pressing, I think, at that point.
Yeah, he had won. He still was dominant at the beginning of the season last year, where he won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the first 7 races. He won 7 of the first 8, 9 races.
Yeah, and then it was a mixed bag the rest of the year, and it was awesome to watch. And we were kind of hoping that's what we were going to get this year, but Ferrari dropped off a lot, and we're not really able to challenge McLaren the same way that they were at the end of last year. But going back onto the Verstappen,
the Verstappen
point, it kind of takes him out of the championship. You feel if he has to be a little more tentative the next 2 races, it gives McLaren a real chance to open up that gap, which currently stands at 39 between Lando and Max and 49 between Oscar and Max.
Yeah,
so
he is
starting to get up there, and McLaren clearly has the better car. You're starting to get to the point where Red Bull might have to think about having that difficult conversation of when do we shut this off? Except that we're taking 4th place in the constructors and focus on 2026, which, by the way, we're building with a completely new engine partner. We're not building this car with Honda for the first time in 7 years. We're now building it with Ford. So it's a big change for them. They're building their own engine. It's new regulations. I think for them, it makes sense to shut it off sooner than later.
It's also interesting because even though these 2 of those points expire on June 30th,
he's still going to carry.
He's still going to have 9 points. He's still going to have 9 points. And you get in a big kerfuffle or whatever it is, and you're back
You
to
could
11
easily
points, or you
take
get to
3
12
points
points
in one incident as well.
Yeah, absolutely. He had his most recent one was he got 3 points for this collision.
There you go.
So even if he does lose those points, like he cannot afford to be driving as aggressively as he has been. That's the thing. That's him. That's Max. He is the most aggressive driver.
Can he afford not to, though?
He can't. So it's a very delicate balance. I think that they need to give it a couple of more races and see how he fares. Say he wins the next 2 races and he's right back in to the Drivers' Championship. Is that going to happen? No, it's not going to happen. But you can't count him out. So, Canada, did he win? Who won Canada last year? Canada was
Max.
Yeah. So he won last year. And I always love seeing the lap records when I click onto the track. You know who has the lap record in Canada?
Oh, man. It's not somebody expected.
Someone very good, but you wouldn't expect them.
God. I cannot.
I'll give you the year. It was 2019.
I mean, I feel like it's probably like Valtteri Bottas or something.
Yep.
that was going to be my first guess, just because I know Mercedes, between him and Lewis, went around resetting almost every record in like 2017 to 2020.
Should we? So this is a good transition. Should we move on to Canada?
Sure.
All right. Canadian Grand Prix. How do you pronounce this? Circuit Gilles?
Gilles.
All right. So this is a multi-DRS track.
Former world champion.
Named after a former world champ. Okay. So first Grand Prix was 1978. 70 laps. Lap record's 113. So this is a fast track.
Lap.
Yeah, quick lap. This looks like a great track. Lot of speed.
It's similar to Monza in a way, where it's a bunch of straights connected by chicanes,
Yep.
and a hairpin. It's a lot of speed. There should be a good amount of overtaking. I mean, that back straight, especially depending on how the wind is blowing on any given day, that DRS is incredible. And then there's that second one after the chicane right by pit entrance and the wall of champions, leading on to the start finish straight. That's a second DRS zone into turn 1. Pretty sure is there a third one too? Around the back of the course?
It says it's technically there's 2 DRS detection zones. DRS stays so sector 3,
the back straight and start finish are the same detection point down by
11, the 11, 12, and 13. Those are all turns, even though it's really straight. It's just like kind of like a bend. They call a turn. That is a DRS zone with a speed trap in there. Then the chicane at 13 to 14, DRS stays open, and then you go into turn 1, 2 to 3, chicane at 4.
It does not stay open, by the way, in that chicane. It closes in braking, and then there's a line to reopen it coming out.
It just says there's 2 DRS detection zones.
No, I know that, but it's not possible for them to make the corner under with DRS because it takes all the downforce off the car.
So then is the speed
so they wouldn't be
able
to turn in. So when they brake, when they hit the brakes, the DRS slot automatically closes.
Okay, so that's speed trap essentially is where they're
it's towards the end of that long straight.
Yep.
So slam the brakes, hit that chicane. The wall of champions is iconic. It's like
which turn is that?
It's coming out of that chicane in 14.
Okay.
It's on the outside of the track, so it's like where the right rear tire is, and it's called the Wall of Champions because of how many world champions crashed into
I
it.
love it. And then the other DRS zone is out of turn 7 to turn 8. That is another DRS zone on the backside in sector 2, which is not that long. It's about the same length as that second DRS zone near the finish line. But or I guess it'd be the third DRS zone. So this is a fast track, and I'm looking forward to this race because it'll be during a nice Eastern Seaboard time for us Americans, which I genuinely can appreciate. I would ask who you think's gonna win, but like it's really just between two guys at this point for every week. Is there anybody that you think could surprise? Like, how encouraged are you with what you've seen from Ferrari the last couple of weeks? Can Charles stay on the podium?
Pretty encouraged, and they've been pretty slippery in a straight line. I think the team to watch out for here is Williams. I think this is a fantastic track for them. It's going to be a great bounce back for them after Barcelona.
Albon had a rough weekend.
It was a tough race for both of them.
Yeah.
I also think I'm saying this slightly tongue in cheek, but watch out for Kimi Antonelli. This track is known for firsts. Was the site of Gilles Villeneuve's first win. It was the site of Jean Alesi's first and only Formula One win. He's a legendary Ferrari driver. It's where Lewis Hamilton won his first race. Also where Daniel Ricciardo won his first race. So
yeah,
there's a bit of a history for first wins here in Canada. Not sure what to attribute that to, but it's exciting.
It's a fast track, it's a fast track, and you're going to get a lot of overtakes on the DRS straights. Yep.
It's also known for one of the greatest races ever, which Jenson Button ended up winning. Also one of the longest. It's why there's now a time limit on races once the lights go out. Yeah, at one point he found himself in 20th, then he won. It was absolute mayhem. There was a little bit of rain. There's everything was involved.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna pick. I'll pick Oscar to win this one, and I mean it's literally just a coin flip, man. Like with these two, it's literally a coin flip. Like there's no way to predict which one of these drivers. Like they're both really good. They both have really good cars. They just seem like it's them two and everybody else. And then I'll say Charles. I'll say Charles comes in third and gets another podium.
Okay, I'm gonna go Lando for the win. I think the straights and chicane combo suit him. He likes throwing it into corners. And then not gonna fill out the podium, but I'm gonna call for at least one Williams in the top 5.
Okay. Any upgrades? I'm looking up to see if there's any upgrades coming for Canada.
I don't think that we know yet.
Nothing that I'm seeing.
It's still a week and a half away, so we probably won't find out until next week.
That's right. So it's not this upcoming weekend. It's 9 days away.
Also, being in North America, it's not necessarily a track you'd bring upgrades to. They generally try to do that in Europe to keep costs down a little more because they're bringing the upgrades to the circuit, but they're also bringing all the old spec too. So
maybe we see a Haas upgrade.
It's just a bunch of extra freight. Well, no, there's factories also in England. So
oh geez. All right. Well, never mind then. No upgrades. No upgrades coming for this race then.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I believe that's most of what we wanted to talk about for this week.
Mm-hmm.
However,
I do have a hot take that I want to kind of put out.
I know that you have a hot take, so the floor is yours, my friend. What do you want? What do you want the world to know?
All right, my hot take this week: NASCAR restarts, bring them to Formula One. Say what you want about NASCAR. Say what you want about NASCAR racing. A green-white checkered finish is one of the most electric things in motorsports, in my opinion. It's, for those of you unfamiliar, if there's a caution in the last few laps of the race, doesn't end under a caution, it doesn't end under a red flag. What they do, and they will do this as many times as they have to do until they get a white flag, because once a white flag happens, the next flag ends the race no matter what. Is they do a full-on restart. You know, most of the field will come into the pit if they need fresh tires. They'll come out double file. They'll be side by side. Restart first lap. Oftentimes there's a crash, so they rack it up, do it again. And so imagine in Monza, right? And I know like some circuits it's not necessarily possible with how tight certain corners are. Like in Monaco, it will be really hard to get people side by side through the last 3 corners. But like in Monza, imagine lights go out on the safety car, field starts to back up, and you've got Oscar and Lando side by side. At this point, it's early September, so we're much further into the season. It's probably around like round 16, 17 of 24. So we're starting to get down to the wire for the championship. So safety car lights go out, starts to pull away. You've got Oscar and Lando sitting side by side, leading the field to the green flag again. And the field just comes ripping around Parabolica side by side and down the main straight. Everybody's jockeying for position, slipstreaming up to turn 1. It's such a long run. There's so much action to be had there. I'd say probably 90% of the time on a safety car restart, you don't see any positions change, just because of how difficult it is coming out of the last corner to stay hooked up to the car in front of you. So if you have a car next to you in that last corner, you can't exactly hit it perfectly. You can't hit the corner perfectly. You're going to probably, I would hope, be a little closer together coming out of it. And at the very least, you have somebody next to you that you're having to fight for position. I think it adds some element of excitement into a safety car of let's not just run it back around in the same order. So yeah, I'm all for it.
I love it. I think that would add so much excitement. I can't say I've seen plenty of NASCAR restarts. I can't say I think that the drivers would love it, because they would be like, oh, it's a little like they don't want to drive on an oval. What makes you think that they're going to want to have like the solid restarts over and over in the case of the crashes? But in terms of entertainment value,
well, yeah, I know that part of it might not be possible just because of how F1 cars are fueled, but I would love to see, at the very least, a red flag procedure, and then we go right into this, half lap behind the safety car, lights go out, and we go for 2 laps or whatever,
That'd be great. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I love it. All right. That's it for us, folks. Thanks for tuning in. As always, you can give us a follow on Twitter. You can give us a follow on Instagram, TikTok, Threads. We're on Threads big time. We're verified on Twitter now. And you can give both of us a follow on our social medias. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. And we'll see you guys next week. Talking, we'll probably do a little. If there's any news over the weekend, we'll do a little quick episode. But if not, then we'll see you guys after Canada.
There's other racing on too.
All right, peace.
We'll see you down the road. Just kidding. Cut that.